It's one of the more exciting times of the offseason, well, I should say, because it usually comes at the dead of the dead period of the offseason, which we are currently in, and that's the release of the NBA schedule. And of course, for Bulls fans, we're looking at the upcoming schedule. For this team. Things to be looking out for, games we're intrigued by, games maybe we're planning to attend, all of that good stuff. And so in today's video, we're going to be talking through some of the key matchups, potentially important games that have implications for playoff positioning, as well as just some of the games that I'm personally excited to see. So what's going on, everyone? You're listening to Bulls Central here. Hope you're all doing well. Real quick, if you are in fact new to the channel, maybe you're looking to get back into Bulls basketball this season, well, you've come to the right place for content. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a video, as I'll be covering this team all season long. Also, I'm going to be on my way to Bulls Fest this weekend, so likely not putting out much content, but if you're going to be heading to Bulls Fest at the United Center, hit me up. Would love to meet some of you guys. But anyway, back to the 23-24 schedule. Before getting into some of these specific games, what I will say is the schedule compared to last season does seem a bit less grueling. Of course, you're probably asking, well, what do you mean by that? They play the same teams the same number of times as they did last year. Well, the difference being the Bulls start off their schedule a little on the easier side. Now, I say that with the caveat that no game is easy in the NBA. These are professional basketball teams with the best players in the world who are going to be coming ready to compete every night. But compared to the pretty tough schedule the Bulls started off with last year, going up against teams like the Pistons twice, Raptors, Pacers, Nets, the Thunder, the Jazz in the first 10 games is nice to hopefully get some wins under their belt to start the season. Give them some confidence when kicking off the year and hopefully getting their stuff together before some of the tougher stretches go into effect. The other reason I say that it seems to be a little more favorable is that the Bulls, what seemed to me last season anyway, is that they had so many traveling back-to-backs, meaning back-to-back games where they weren't consecutively at home, but rather needing to go to a different location for each game. There aren't as many of those this season. In fact, I feel the overall number of back-to-backs don't appear to be as grueling as last season, which I know the league was going to be placing more of a focus on to reduce the number of back-to-backs to limit injuries and load management, and trying to avoid these situations where a team would have 3 or 4 nights off and then follow that up with 4 games in 5 nights, which I know we complained a lot about last season. Not as much as the case this year. Yeah, there are still back-to-backs, you're never going to avoid that, but the schedule overall appears to be much more balanced. A few notes on the schedule as a whole. The Bulls actually have the 11th easiest strength of schedule in the NBA, 8th in the East. They have 13 games with more rest than their opponent, again, going back to the limited number of back-to-backs of the season, which means more rest between games. The Bulls do have 14 back-to-backs, while there are 10 teams in the NBA who only have 13 back-to-backs, but the Bulls have less traveling consecutive games than most teams do. Now, going through the list as some of these key games to be looking out for, well, of course, you have opening night, which is a home game. I feel like it's been a while since the Bulls started off their season at home, and it being a game against the Oklahoma City Thunder on October 25th. This should be a fun one, given the fact that the Bulls have kind of struggled against the Thunder and their youth movement in recent years, but it'll be interesting to see Chet Holmgren make his debut, NBA debut in Chicago, going up against Vucevic. Hopefully Vuce makes good work of him, as I'm sure Holmgren is going to have some nerves playing in his first NBA game, but it's also possible Vuce might be in for a tough night against that tall, lengthy, high-level defender that Holmgren is. And of course, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, gotta love watching that guy play, even though he's killed the Bulls in the past. The next game I'm looking forward to seeing is against the Mavs on November 1st. Curious to see how this team is now going to look with a full offseason and training camp under their belt with Kyrie Irving. We'll also get our first look at Derrick Jones Jr. after he opted out of his player option this summer, and of course, always fun to see Luka Doncic. The next game that will be key is on November 8th, when the Bulls will get their first look at the newly assembled super team of the Phoenix Suns after adding Bradley Beal this summer. Going to be a tough outing, but it'll be at home, and hopefully the home crowd can energize this crew to put the super team away. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention are those in-season tournament games that count towards regular season standings. Those will obviously be key games to look out for. The first one being against the Nets on November 3rd, and then the Magic on the 17th. That will be right after playing the Magic in a prior game, but not for the in-season tournament. I'm always looking for those Magic games because I'm always getting into it with Magic fans on Twitter, and it makes the banter even more fun. And you know what? I'm not a fan of the in-season tournament. I think it's super gimmicky, a money grab for the league, but I'm going to give it a chance. Maybe it'll make the beginning of the regular season more exciting, although if you're a real diehard fan of the game, all of the games are going to be exciting no matter what. And actually, if the Bulls make it to the championship in this in-season tournament, because the game is going to be played in Vegas, I'm only a short plane ride away from Vegas. I'm going to make my way out to the game. Why not? Good excuse to get to Vegas anyway. Now, other games. The Bulls have the defending champs at home on November 12th. It will be fun to see Nikola Jokic and co. come to town. The Bulls will actually face off against the Nuggets in Denver on November 4th, which has kind of been a mini United Center with the number of Bulls fans who have been showing up to that game. The Bulls will host LeBron and the Lakers, possibly the last time we'll see LeBron in a Lakers uniform. That's going to be on December 20th, but I'm actually more excited about the game following that on the day after, on the 21st, in which the Bulls will be facing off against the San Antonio Spurs, where we'll get our first look at Victor Wembanyama in Chicago. A lot of hype surrounding this kid. I personally think he's going to be worth all the hype and will be the future of the league, but we'll see how he shows up this year in his rookie season. And we'll see how the Bulls respond to going up against one of the worst teams in the league. They will be a better team, meaning the Spurs, but likely still a lottery team. Will the Bulls get over the challenge they had last season in playing horribly against some of the worst teams in the NBA? January 3rd, the Bulls will be taking on the Knicks for the first time in the season, this one on ESPN at Madison Square Garden. Always love those matchups against the Knicks, no matter how good or bad each team is. I cannot stand the Knicks, never have, and I hope the Bulls make good work of them as they did last season at MSG, where DeMar hit that dagger game winner while getting fouled. That was incredible. Then on January 12th, the Bulls will host the Warriors. Always an exciting game whenever you're going up against one of the teams that changed the way the game is played, more specifically seeing Steph Curry, as we probably are going to start seeing some of the final years of his best basketball at his age. For me, though, you guys know I'm more interested when the Bulls come to town to play the Warriors in the Bay. Most of you know I live out in the Bay Area and always come to see the Bulls play when they take on the Warriors. Hasn't been pretty going to those games. Warriors have kind of owned the Bulls at home for what seems like the last decade now. I'm hoping, fingers crossed, I'm hoping this will be the year the Bulls finally do it and win it in San Francisco, and I can drive home happy. That game is going to be on March 7th. If any of you are actually planning on going to that game, let me know. I met some of you last year and it was a fun time. What also might be insignificant game to most, but the Bulls are playing the Kings in Sacramento on March 4th, hoping to make it out to that game as well, as I'm about an hour-and-a-half drive away from there. And hey, the Kings are actually good now. They're a fun and exciting team to watch. They play a very similar style of offense as the Warriors initially pioneered back in 2015. A young team, athletic team, that should be a fun game as well. Another game to keep an eye out on is on March 9th, when the Bulls will face off against the Clippers, get our chance to see Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, and maybe James Harden if in fact the Sixers concede and try to trade him for cheap to the Clips. Then on March 18th, might not be a blockbuster level game because I think by then Damian Lillard will have been traded, but I'm actually looking forward to seeing Scoot Henderson taking on the Bulls in Chicago. I really wanted this dude in the draft if the Bulls got lucky, moved up into the top 4, but of course it wasn't meant to be. But seeing Scoot, whose game is very reminiscent to that of a young Derrick Rose, back at the United Center is something I'm excited to see for sure, even though the Blazers aren't going to be a very good team, especially when they lose Damian Lillard. And then finally, I'm also keeping a close eye on the final games in the schedule because those can have a big impact on potential playoff seeding. Best to have a lighter schedule at the end of the year, either to fight for the final playoff spots or to potentially rest up a bit and get ready for the playoffs depending on how the Bulls do overall. And looking at those last games, it's kind of odd. The Bulls are actually going to be playing the Knicks 3 times in the final 6 games of the season, including the very last game of the year, which I'm all about because I don't think the Knicks are going to be as good as they were last year. And then the Magic, Pistons, and Wizards, I mean, that's a very favorable way to close out the season, going up against likely 3 lottery teams and the Knicks, who I still think will make the playoffs, but unlikely to replicate the success that they had last year. So finishing out the season like that, when, I hope anyway, the Bulls are going to be jockeying for playoff positioning, and whether there'll be a play-in team versus one to skip the play-in entirely and secure a spot in the playoffs the old-fashioned way. But all in all, it's going to be a fun season. I know last year was a disappointment, and it's very possible the Bulls could come out and disappoint again this year, but I always go into a season with high hopes and positive expectations, although trying to maintain realistic expectations at the same time. I still think the Bulls are likely going to be nothing more than a play-in team, but I do think that they'll make it into the playoffs this time around. I'll obviously have a video out closer to the start of the season on my season predictions, win totals, seeding for the Bulls in the East, potential all-star and award winners for the year, all that good stuff, so be on the lookout for that come October after training camp. Hope to see you guys all at Bulls Fest this weekend. And as always, guys, be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.